All right, good morning, YouTube. This is Mike from Beautiful Day Garden in the Lehigh Valley of Eastern Pennsylvania, Zone 6B. And today, what I want to do is I want to go over some of the do's and don'ts of gardening, especially some of the things that I've learned in this 2021 vegetable gardening season. So right here, I have my yellow Cubanelle peppers, and one of the things I didn't do this year is to stake them up. When I put the seedlings in the ground, I didn't put stakes in the ground at the same time. So what happened was, as the peppers, the yellow Cubanelle peppers grew, the plant became a little top heavy and they would tip over. So we have this one here lying on the ground. And so what I attempted to do, I guess it was last week, is to put a stake in the ground, and the idea was I was going to prop this pepper plant up. Okay, great. What I didn't think of, as I was putting the stake in the ground, I was destroying the roots on this side of the plant. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as I was pounding the wooden stake in the ground with a hammer, I was destroying the top of the wooden stake. It was splintering apart. I don't know if you can see it from that distance, but it was splintering apart. So I was destroying the stake. So what I do is come up with a different staking system for the plants. I have to put this, number one, I have to put the stakes in when I put the seedlings in the beginning of the planting season. Number two, I have to come up with a different system than the wooden stakes for next season. Okay, so one of the things I'm real happy with is the variety of the different tomatoes. We can see the red cherry tomatoes here, green zebra tomatoes, Roma tomatoes. Just the sheer variety of the different types of tomatoes. Just getting a little closer on these blueberry tomatoes. Real happy with the production here. Yep, some more Roma tomatoes. Now we got some splitting because it's been raining quite a bit the past 3 days. So as the tomatoes took on the water, they tend to split. And that's fine. We could just cut out, maybe the split section there, but the rest of the tomatoes really, really good. Now here's my first year trying Yellow Boy tomatoes. I'm real happy with the way they came out. So that's something I definitely try again, next year. The string trellises, something I definitely do again for next year. Coming on this section here, we have our Sun Gold tomatoes. You can see really decent production here. I'm real happy with the way these came out this year. And again, you can see my 4-stem technique, right? Makes things just a lot easier to see. And what I do is, of course, I trim the foliage underneath the growing tomatoes because it's really not necessary. And it just makes things a whole lot easier to see too. So I keep the foliage towards the top of the plant, the developing plant. But underneath here, you can see we're getting a lot of nice ripe Sun Gold tomatoes. Here's just a few more tomatoes. I do these again next year. Real happy with the way these came out. These are on the string trellis here. Now on the string trellis, I really like the way these black clips can help stabilize the string holder here. Because without this black clip, what I found happen is these metal holders that hold the string here, they just pop right off the cord. When I have the black clips here, it really secures them, kind of nicely. So I can shake this, and you can see how solid it is. It's not going anyplace. So that's something I definitely try next year. Okay, so one of the other things I learned this gardening season is that I have to come up with a way to make the tomato cages more stable. And what I mean by that is right here. You can see how as the tomato plant grew throughout the season, it became top heavy, and there was just not enough support. So the tomato cages, some of them were tipping over like this one here, you know. So as I do my 4-stem technique, you know, the plant maybe gets a little bit lighter towards the bottom, and then I'm not trimming the foliage at the top of the plant as much, so it becomes top heavy, and then the tomato cage just tips right over. So I had to come up with a plan to make them more stable next year, so that when they grow later in the season, I don't get a problem like this, because this can, you know, maybe uproot the plant, destroy, you know, some of the branches and whatnot. So any ideas, please, you know, share them with me in the comment section below. But this is, you know, one thing I obviously have to come up with a solution for. Okay, so here I have my string trellis system, and you can see that as the plants grow, I just simply wrap the growing stem around the string, and the vine just grows up along the string. And this is something that I'm going to use next year. I really like it. And as I trim the foliage from the lower part of the plant, it enables me to really get a good view of the production here, so that it's not hidden inside a big bushy plant, you know. So I can, you know, easily see when the fruit is ripened and see how it's developing. It gives me control over the tomato vines themselves as they grow up. You know, I can really have control over, you know, how the plant is growing. So this is something I'm going to employ, you know, on a larger scale next year. It's number one, it's more economical, you know. You know, tomato cages, maybe they'll cost $6 a piece, and if you're buying 100, that's $600. Of course, if you have a larger operation, then you're buying, it's going to be more costly. So it's much more economical to do the string trellis system, and it's just as easy really to see you know, the developing vines, and to tend to the plants, to you know, trim away the suckers, and to have as many stems growing as you want. You know, with tomato cages, I've been doing the 4-stem technique. With this technique, I'm trying maybe 2, 3, or 4 stems, you know, because with the string trellis system, it can get a little bit crowded here, you know, along the strings, along this little, you know, flat two-dimensional plane that I'm having them grow up. So, but I really like it because, like I said, you can see, you know, the produce, you know, growing, how the tomatoes are doing. You get to, you know, train the tomato vines, and it seems to me it's an easy way to keep the plants, you know, as the season, you know, goes on. So this is something, one of the do's that I'm going to be doing more of next year. Okay, so here's my string trellis behind me, and this is one of the string trellises that I have that I didn't put support in the middle. So as a result, what we're looking at is the top cord or string is bowing down, because as the tomato plants grow, they get heavier, right? So that heaviness pulls down the top cord, and we get this bowing effect. Now, so next year what I want to do is I want to provide more support, probably putting an extra T-post or 2 in the middle, so that it's more support for the top cord, so we don't get this bowing effect. You know, I really like the string trellis system. It's more economical. It's a very easy way to train the tomato vines, you know, to grow where you want them to. It's just easier to tend to the plant, but we're getting this bowing effect. So I'm going to put some extra support in next year, and I think that'll work out really well. The other thing is, you can see the up here I have the mammoth sunflowers, and you can see how as the head of the sunflower grows, it gets pretty heavy, so it tips down. And I have to think of a way to maybe, I don't know, provide some support for that so it doesn't tip down as much. It's not the end of the world, you know, it's tipping down, but I just thought that it might, you know, look prettier, or you know, it was just propped up like so you could see the flowering, you know. So I don't know. I'll see next year if I can come up with like some supports on the stem that would help hold the head up as it gets heavier. So it would just kind of prop the head up so we get to see the flowering a little bit more, you know. But live and learn. And these are two things that I'll be doing next year. But see if I can just add a little bit more support to get a little bit better result. Okay, one of the things I'm not going to be doing next year will be pumpkins. You know, this is something that I've never grown them before, so I just wanted to try it out and see how it would work. But what I find happens is that the pumpkin vines literally take over. They grow at an incredible rate, and they just take over the garden, you know, as you can see here. The other thing, I tried to prop up one of the pumpkin vines on a tomato cage, and well, you can see the result right behind me here. What happened was the weight of the developing pumpkin just was too much for the tomato cage, and it just kind of bent over. And so that's one thing I'm not going to be doing next year. But it's just, for me, it's just something I just wanted to try, you know, for this year. And it was a good experience. It's a learning experience. And this is the only way that you really learn from one season to the next, you know. So I learned, this is the don't. I'm not going to be doing this one next year. All right, so here's just another view of the pumpkin patch I have. And you can see how the vines just literally take over. And believe it or not, there's Swiss chard under here. Let's see if I can kind of zoom in. You can see the Swiss chard there. But what's happening is the vines are just taking over. The pumpkin vines are just taking over. So next year, I'm not going to be doing the pumpkins because it's just too much. You know, it's just something I wanted to try this year. And it was great to try, but they just take over. They really do grow like weeds. So this is one of the don'ts for next year. Okay, so one thing that I really like this year, this is my first time planting fennel. And as we can see, it gets, you know, pretty bushy, and it's a little hard to see. So next year, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plant the fennel in a different place, and I'm gonna have it a little bit more organized so it's just easier to see. Because, I mean, this is great, but you really can't see the fennel plant itself, or how many fennel plants are here. You really can't see how many fennel plants are here or how they're developing. So what I want to do next year is to just simply plant them in just a little more organized fashion. You know, I want to plant them up in this section here. So I have a row of eggplant there. I want to have a row of fennel there in front. And I think that's going to help have them just a little more organized. Okay, so here's something I'll definitely be doing again next year. This is my row of eggplants here. And what I'm going to do next year, I'm going to give them support. When I plant the seedling, I'm going to also put in the support at the same time. Because as these grow, they get heavier. And I'm thinking the plant can easily tip over. So here it looks like the Matoyo eggplant really coming along. Next door, we got the same kind of thing, coming up really strong. Now we have strong stems there, but as we get more production, I'm thinking that the eggplant's going to be weighted down from the top and it's going to tip over. So next year, this is one of the do's, but I'm going to add a stake to stake them up. I'm going to put the stake in at the same time I put the seedling in, and that should work out nice. Okay, one of the do's for next year would be the tomato rows. So having a row of one kind of tomato, then a row of another kind of tomato. And I just kind of like the organization of that. And the other thing I really, I think I'm going to do again next year would be the 4-stem technique. I think that really helps out quite a bit, as far as organizing and getting to see the produce, see the tomatoes developing without having to have all the foliage covering it, So as I get towards the top, then I have, more foliage, but towards the bottom, whatever is below the developing tomatoes, I trim off because they're excess, they're not needed. So I trim them off, and it's just a much easier way to actually see the tomatoes. It looks a lot neater. You can see my 4-stem technique here with the black clips here. That's worked out real well to train the tomato vines to grow up the tomato cage here. So that's something I'm definitely going to do again next year. And it just worked out so well, this year. Now, just scooting over here, these are some tomato plants that I really didn't, well, while I used the 4-stem technique, I didn't tend to these, nearly as much as the other tomato plants. So they're a little bit bushier, and you can see that I have a cucumber vine growing in here as well. So this is just a section I didn't get to. So this is what a typical tomato plant would look like. And it's just much harder to see. You have to kind of dig through to see, what you have, what's developing. In this section here you can see I have the 4-stem technique again. And so it's just easier, it's just so much easier to see the developing tomatoes. Now I have some trimming to do here because it's been about a week or two since I trimmed this one. Cutting back here, we have some peppers. Moving up top here, we have some more tomato plants growing. The 4-stem technique, you can see how I trim the foliage from the bottom below any developing tomatoes, and it just makes it so much easier to see and to pick the fruit. Now here's a good example of what I was talking about previously. We can see how the tomato cage, it just gets top heavy and it topples over. So I had to come up with a way to make it more stable for next year. Well, live and learn. So I'll be applying that for next year. And here's a good example. Let me show you here. Here's my Roma tomatoes, and you can see what happened is the tomato cage you see how the wire just bent. The cage itself just bent because it became top heavy, right? Yeah, it just became top heavy. So I just have to come up with a way to make them more stable as they grow. But that's something I can apply for next year. Okay, so here's one of the do's for next year, my cucumbers. I got really, pretty good production on cucumbers this year. It was really my first time planting them. So I'm just really happy with the way they came out. It's towards the end of the season now, so things are kind of drying up some. We got some nice cucumbers. We got some nice production from this. So next year I really want to expand on this and grow a lot more of the cucumbers. Really happy with the way they came out this first season. So this is one of the do's for next year. So once again, thank you for joining me on this episode of Beautiful Day Garden. I hope you maybe learned some do's and don'ts like I did from this year's garden. things I'd like to bring forward into next year and apply to next year's garden. But I really had a lot of fun with it. You know, each gardening season I learned quite a bit, and you know, this season was certainly no exception. You know, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for joining me. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next episode. Take care.